Howard Johnson. Howard D. Johnson.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being patient. Thank you very much. So, yes. So what I'm trying to do is present this book to you. There isn't many copies because I've been touring it like mad around the country. So there's only a few copies today, but the book is available on various websites. You can get the book at various places, and we'll talk about that afterwards. So, as Nat said, racism is vamping up in the world around us. Anti-blackness is more intense. Anti-black racism is more intense than you could ever imagine. And of course, there is all sorts of problems that's presented to the black community. But I want to present this book. Am I standing in the right place? I don't want to block it. Yeah? So, well, if I'm standing there, I probably can do it myself. I probably can. So, the Racism Handbook for people classified as black. Okay? Here we go. So, let me just read a little excerpt from the book for you, yeah? And then we'll get going on that. So, if you do not understand racism correctly, someone's talking, could you just keep that down a little bit, please? Because it's sort of bugging my ears as well. If you do not understand racism correctly, you do not understand yourself. The black self is constructed in the Eurocentric world in which you were born. This handbook will show that in this Western world, you were born into a global, interconnected system of racism, white domination, or supremacy. This is so whether you live in the UK, US, France, Germany, Africa, the Caribbean, or anywhere else on Earth. Moreover, it means that you were categorized at birth as a sub-person. Furthermore, it means that your psyche has been subjected to unrelenting psychopolitical violence from an early age. Fundamentally, this violence has disconnected you from your history, your black self. Thus, the purpose of this handbook is to help black people grasp the full meaning of this system so as to understand the social, political, economic, cultural and psychological nature of their existence as African people classified as black. So that's just an opening for you. So why is the Racism Handbook needed at this time? And really, I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room. Racism is totally vamping up, and it was really easy to know that Donald Trump was going to be president again. Racism is reproducing itself. It doesn't really go away. All right, so there's a few stats there. Today, racial discrimination is rising in Europe. We know that. In the UK and the US. And if we look at the US landscape, we see that about 6 in 10 Americans say that race relations in the UK are bad. Sorry, in the US are bad. Some 56% are convinced that the president, and when I wrote this was his first term. Because I think I set this up in 22. Has made race relations worse. Just 15% says he's improved race relations. Furthermore, roughly 2/3 say that it's become more common for people to express racist views. Trump became president, since Trump became president. US relations totally impact UK relations. We know that. So, there is a reason here. Look at this bit, please. In Europe, we have the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights Commission paper, I don't know if you saw that, being black in the EU, reported continued racism widespread across Europe. That's Eastern and Western Europe. This is the reality for many people, the report said, in the EU today. Just because of the colour of their skin, many people of African descent are routinely met with unfair treatment and bias when seeking jobs or homes. Racial discrimination, harassment and violence continues to haunt the daily lives of people. these are not isolated incidents, but recurring experiences across all aspects of our lives. Let me just put my glasses on. I wondered why things were not working, because I've got glasses on. I keep thinking that I'm 30 years younger than I am, but I'm not. Right. Look at this bit, please, brothers and sisters. In the UK, we remember this? In 2020, the government set up a commission on race relations and ethnic disparities. This was called the Credit Report. It established by the UK government after the Black Lives Matter social movement protests globally exploded in 2020. The document completely failed to acknowledge how the legacies of African enslavement continue to shape wealth inequalities and the life experiences of black and African people in Britain. Also, it failed to acknowledge the racist discrimination in sections such as education, housing, income, police and healthcare, and of course the criminal justice system. So racism is vamping up as we speak. Overall, the racist report denies systemic and institutional racism within the UK, and of course that was established to some degree by the Macpherson report following the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Furthermore, it ignores that the UK's internationally and historically instigating and maintaining structural and global racism. So I don't want to bore you with the stats, because black people, you do not have to tell black people that racism is vamping up. But this is an interesting stat. We normally think of the United States as segregated. I'm always talking to people who know, so this is a wonderful moment for me, because sometimes I'm doing these things and people don't know, but everybody here knows. It's just wonderful. In Britain, there's a huge amount of segregation, but it's no longer signposted by various laws. Therefore, it will be difficult for most whites to see racial discrimination as a reality and problem. So there is segregation in the UK, but it's not signposted like it is in the United States. It's less visible. And certainly, I've been a school teacher for 20 years, it's the same. All right? There's racial segregation all over the country. Now, one of our amazing scholars, Charles Mills, Caribbean scholar who lived in the United States, he explained that historically a lot of whites tend to measure how well they are doing in life in relation to black people. He called this intrinsically relational. If they are higher than blacks on the social economic ladder, it is this that seems important to them. It seems impossible to get some whites to reject the perception. So that is an issue, particularly if we're thinking in terms of allyship. In the UK, US Caribbean, right, one of the concepts in my book is called racial illiteracy. So in the UK, in the US, Caribbean and Africa, most black people and their children, regardless of their social economic status, are what the handbook calls racially illiterate. Okay? This is what the handbook calls it. It's not a disparaging term. It's a term that talks to the reality of what we know since we're educated in the system. So, this is a term that I use, racially illiterate. It doesn't mean you're socially illiterate, it doesn't mean you're economically illiterate, but race, in matters of race and racism, and I don't mean this disparagingly, and I'm part of this, we're all part. I argue, and I give evidence in my book, that we are racially illiterate as a people. Racially. What do I mean by this? What are some of the key aspects of racial illiteracy? Well, many black people do not properly understand race and racism, e.g. race as central to the making of the modern world, and as a project of colonial rule, confusing racism for ethnic conflict, bias or prejudice, black-on-black violence with claims that black people are racist as well, and not really understanding this thing called systems of racism as being in existence. And I know in the black community there's this superficial argument over words and whatever, whether it's white supremacy or white dominance. All that stuff is an act of racial illiteracy. Okay? Let's go on to the next problem. The racially illiterate person has little and fragmented knowledge of the black experience. What do I mean by that? a sequential and basic study of black modern history, sequentially. So you understand, oh, we went from this to this to this to this. Oh, we went from the civil rights to black power movement, and each we have a sequential understanding of that and how it relates to the UK as well. And many of us lack that. They learn bits and pieces of knowledge as they go along, which will take a lifetime, and most of it's incorrect, twisted and misleading, and by then it might be too late. So with most of us, when we leave school, we're picking knowledge up, okay, bits and pieces as we go along. And nobody in this room, nobody, including me, had any race education if we were born in this country or the Caribbean. There is no race education for black people. So we are actually picking it up as we go along. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can say, yes, my thinking's changed. I can see this more clearly than I did 10 years ago or so. All right, so this picking it up as we go along is not good enough. We haven't got time to pick it up as we go along. This is what I'm trying to say. Right, next thing. They are unable to pass proper black knowledge and liberation onto their children beyond the superficial. What's the superficial? Oh, black people, we have a history of slavery. Oh, there's lots of racism around. Oh, so white people don't like us. That's superficial. Okay? It's surface level. We need a deeper understanding of the black experience. Okay? Because we are not passing it on to our children, because we don't know the situation. So we pass on what we know, which may be incorrect, because we didn't have any education, okay? Race education. Right, let's move on to the next point. There's some more examples here. Did we do that last one? Yeah, good. Right, then should be continued. Right, racial illiteracy continued. What have we got next? A racially illiterate person, black person, generally is unaware of the forces of white supremacy. If you're tripping out over that word, change it to white domination. We haven't got time for that. You know what it is. These terms are irrelevant. We are catching hell. Don't worry about whether you want to call it white supremacy or white domination. We know we're not inferior. That's all that matters. We haven't got time to play games over words. That's what the racist Europeans do. Right, the practice of racelessness. Nobody in this room is doing this. But lots of black people who are, let's say their social economic status might be better than many of us in this room. Okay, and I meet them all the time in schools. We'll do questions at the end, I promise. Okay, I meet them at school. They're educated blacks, often bourgeois. They practice racelessness. What is racelessness? A motivated attempt to ignore race as a significant factor in one's life. In other words, I say, they've got their house, they've got their car, they've got their Venetian blinds, so what are you talking about? Everything's fine. It's deep selfishness as well. But it's racelessness. Race doesn't mean anything. I've got everything. I'm liberated because I've got my house, car, and Venetian blinds. Right. They have a limited understanding of the determinants of whiteness. Whiteness is a study at university. You can study that. You're not studying fish and chips, nothing like that. You're studying whiteness as a political system. Okay? The determinations of whiteness. In other words, a simple way of looking at that, to understand how white attitudes impact on racism. And the psychology of racism as an important factor in one's life. We have a lot of black people who understand racism without the psychology. Big mistake. Big mistake. Most of you know about Fanon, one of our French activists, Frantz Fanon. He was right at the forefront of black liberation. He was out there fighting. But he brought psychoanalytic discussions into racism. In fact, he's shown quite clearly that you don't understand racism unless you're prepared to look at the psychology of it as well. And it's the psychology of it that many racist Europeans get one up on us, because we don't understand the psychology of racism. What's next? They seek, these are the racially illiterate person, seeks deliberately to develop their personality and life in the interest of white power and domination of blacks and other non-whites. We see lots of blacks doing that. Oh well, we are not much of the people, so let me develop my life and personality. You see? And we have a lot of black people in the media who are really celebrities pretending to be activists. There's a problem with that. It's quite complex, okay? It's quite complex. Are you a celebrity or you're an activist? It's quite complex. I don't have the answers, but it's something we need to look at, okay? But we mustn't, a racially illiterate person develops their personality in the interest of white power, okay? Because we think that's what we should do. Let's move on. Got that bit. And so, an important epistemological question. One thing about knowledge, it's just a bunch of words, brothers and sisters, that's all it is. Okay? Epistemology is knowledge production. That's all that is. Where did you get your knowledge? Where did it come from? Who's dispensating that knowledge? Where did the knowledge come from? The person who gave you the knowledge. That's the epistemology. Is all knowledge value free? This is epistemology. An important epistemological